Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Unseen Wisdom. We love bringing you these deep dives into stories behind the headlines. And today, we have one that's really stranger than fiction. It's the unbelievable saga of Thabo Bester. You might know him as South Africa's Facebook rapist, but he's also an escape artist extraordinaire. So if you're into true crime with a side of social commentary, this one is for you. And before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel so you can get more deep dives just like this.
Yeah, this case is just wild. It's almost hard to believe that it actually happened.
I know, right? I mean, it has everything. Murder mystery, a prison break high society, and a glamorous doctor who gets caught up in it all. I mean, talk about a recipe for intrigue. Before we dive into the escape itself, let's paint a picture of who Thabo Bester really is.
Yeah, so this deep dive is based on a recent documentary about Bester. And it all starts by taking us back to his beginnings. He was born in Soweto, a township outside of Johannesburg known for its stark economic inequalities. It's a place where opportunity is very limited, and life can be incredibly tough.
So you're saying that his environment may have played a role in shaping his path?
It's certainly a factor to consider. According to the documentary, Bester's early life was very challenging. He was raised primarily by his grandmother, who sadly passed away when he was a teenager. And from a young age, he seemed to crave a life of luxury, extravagance, a far cry from his reality in Soweto.
And that's where his criminal activities began.
Exactly. The documentary highlights how, even as a teenager, Bester displayed a knack for deception and manipulation. He turned to crime, starting with petty scams and cons, just to fuel this desire for a more lavish lifestyle. He really had a talent for creating illusions and making people believe what he wanted them to believe.
And these early crimes eventually escalated to something much darker.
Yes, unfortunately. Bester's crimes became increasingly serious. He was first convicted at the age of 17, then served time in prison for fraud. But it was his later crimes that truly shocked South Africa. He was eventually convicted of raping 3 women, including 2 models and his ex-girlfriend, whom he also tragically murdered. And he became known as the Facebook rapist because he used social media to lure victims.
That's incredibly disturbing.
Yeah.
And these horrific crimes landed him a lengthy prison sentence, right?
Yes. He was sentenced to 50 years plus life in prison, which, seemingly brought an end to his reign of terror. He was sent to Mangaung Correctional Centre, South Africa's second largest private prison, which, as the documentary points out, has a rather notorious reputation for violence, gang activity, and overall dysfunction.
Okay, so we have a convicted murderer and rapist in a high-security prison. You'd think that's where the story ends, but that's just the beginning of this crazy saga, right?
You're absolutely right. Prison didn't stop Thabo Bester. In fact, it was within the confines of Mangaung that he met a key figure in this story, Dr. Nandipa Magudumana.
Now, Dr. Magudumana is a fascinating character in all of this. The documentary paints her as this successful, glamorous celebrity doctor from Johannesburg. How did she end up involved with a convicted criminal like Bester?
It's a question that has puzzled many. They met during one of her visits to the prison, and their relationship quickly blossomed into something much deeper and far more dangerous.
So it wasn't just a simple doctor-patient relationship?
Not at all. The documentary suggests that Dr. Magudumana became entangled in Bester's web of manipulation, helping him establish a fake property business and funneling money into his prison account.
So he was running a business from behind bars. How is that even possible?
That's where things get really interesting. The documentary explains that Bester was allowed access to a laptop under the pretense of studying graphic design. However, he used this opportunity to create an elaborate online persona, Tom Motsepe. This fictitious Harvard graduate and former executive at 21st Century Fox. It was brilliant, but incredibly audacious.
So he basically catfished an entire social circle. And not just anyone, Johannesburg's elite.
Precisely. He tapped into this deep-seated desire for proximity to wealth and power. People were drawn to this Tom Motsepe persona, completely oblivious to the fact that they were interacting with a convicted criminal, operating from within a maximum security prison.
And this fake persona actually gained traction.
Oh, absolutely. Bester, as Tom Motsepe, even went so far as to establish a fake media company called 21st Century Media, cleverly mimicking the name of the real 21st Century Fox. And this charade, as the documentary shows, managed to gain traction, particularly within Johannesburg's elite circles, who were eager to be part of this seemingly promising new media venture.
Unbelievable. And it gets even crazier. This Motsepe actually hosted a lavish launch event for his fake company, right?
Yes, he held this grand event at the Hilton Hotel in Santon, often referred to as the richest square mile in Africa.
Yep.
And the guest list included activists, philanthropists, news anchors, members of high society, all completely unaware that they were rubbing shoulders with a convicted criminal.
That's wild. Wait, so was he actually there, or was this all done remotely?
He wasn't physically present, which is even more mind-blowing. According to the documentary, Bester called in to the event, pretending to be in New York, and even received birthday wishes from the unsuspecting crowd. It's a testament to his skill as a master manipulator.
The audacity is almost impressive. But like all elaborate schemes, it couldn't last forever, right? What caused Bester's house of cards to start crumbling?
Well, his downfall kind of started when he tried to book some A-list celebrities for one of his fake events. And the celebrities, of course, denied any involvement. And that kind of set off alarm bells. The documentary highlights how social media went into a frenzy, questioning, Tom Motsepe's legitimacy.
So the cracks were starting to show.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, the real 21st Century Fox caught wind of this charade, and they filed a lawsuit against him, effectively shutting down his operation. The Tom Motsepe facade was crumbling, and Bester's carefully constructed world was starting to fall apart.
Okay, so the jig is up. What happens next?
Well, in 2022, a fire breaks out in Bester's cell. At Mangaung Correctional Centre, a burnt body is found, and the authorities quickly declare him dead. Case closed, right? Well, not quite.
Hold on. This is too convenient. Are you saying the fire was part of his plan all along?
That's what investigative journalists started to suspect. The documentary introduces us to GroundUp, a small independent news organization in Cape Town, known for its in-depth reporting and commitment to holding those in power accountable.
GroundUp. I've heard of them. They're like the South African version of ProPublica or Bellingcat.
Exactly. They're known for digging deep and not letting go until they find the truth. And in Bester's case, they had a hunch that something wasn't adding up.
So what did they find?
They uncovered a series of inconsistencies. That raised serious doubts about the official narrative. First, there was the CCTV footage, which was suspiciously blurry and incomplete during the crucial time of the fire. Then there were the physical discrepancies. Bester was quite tall, over 6 feet, but the body found in his cell was considerably shorter. And then there were the witness accounts. Some inmates claim that Bester was unusually jovial in the days leading up to the fire, as if he knew something was about to happen.
So they had a lot of circumstantial evidence. But was there anything concrete that pointed to Bester being alive?
The turning point came with the post-mortem report. It revealed that the body found in Bester's cell had actually died from blunt force trauma to the head before the fire. There were no signs of smoke inhalation, indicating that the person was already dead when the fire started. It was a clear sign that this was a staged death.
Wow. So someone had smuggled a body into the prison and set it on fire to make it look like Bester had died.
That's exactly what it looked like. And then GroundUp received a tip that would blow the case wide open. They were sent a photo of Bester, alive and well, shopping with Dr. Magudumana in Santon weeks after his supposed death. This photo was the smoking gun they needed.
That's incredible. Talk about a bombshell revelation.
It was a huge story. The authorities were forced to admit that Bester had escaped, and suddenly this convicted murderer and rapist was back in the news, sparking a nationwide manhunt. He and Dr. Magudumana became known as South Africa's Bonnie and Clyde, with their faces plastered all over the media.
I can only imagine the public outrage. This guy had pulled off the ultimate con, faking his own death and escaping from a maximum security prison.
The documentary captures this sense of disbelief and anger. People were demanding answers. How could this have happened? How deep did the corruption go? Who else was involved?
So what happened next? Did they catch Bester and Magudumana?
The manhunt was intense. They were on the run, living a lavish lifestyle while evading the authorities. They were eventually tracked to a luxury mansion in Santon, but they managed to slip away just before the police arrived.
Always one step ahead. Sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does, but their luck eventually ran out. They were apprehended in Tanzania, just as they were attempting to cross the border into Kenya.
So the long arm of the law finally caught up with them.
It did. They were extradited back to South Africa to face justice. Bester was positively identified through fingerprints, confirming that he was indeed the mastermind behind this elaborate escape.
But what about the body found in his cell? Did they ever figure out who that was?
Yes. Tragically, the body was identified as Katlego Beering, a 31-year-old father of two who had gone missing a month before the fire. His family was devastated, their grief compounded by the horrifying realization that their loved one had been caught in the crossfire of Bester's escape.
That's heartbreaking. So not only did Bester orchestrate his own escape, but an innocent man lost his life in the process.
It's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of Bester's actions. His pursuit of freedom came at a terrible cost.
Okay, so Bester and Magudumana are back in custody. What happens next? What were the charges, and how deep did this conspiracy go?
Well, as you can imagine, this case opened up a Pandora's box of questions about corruption within the prison system. A parliamentary investigation was immediately launched, aiming to scrutinize the failures. That allowed such a brazen escape to take place.
You have to wonder how many people were involved in this scheme. It couldn't have been just Bester and Magudumana, right?
You're absolutely right. The investigation revealed a web of accomplices, including prison officials, Dr. Magudumana's father, and a CCTV technician who allegedly tampered with the security system.
Wow, so it was a full-blown conspiracy. What were the charges?
Bester and his accomplices were hit with a slew of charges. Fraud, corruption, aiding an inmate's escape, violation of a corpse. The list goes on and on. It was a clear indication that the authorities were taking this case very seriously and were determined to hold everyone involved accountable.
And what about Bester and Magudumana? Did they admit to their roles in this elaborate escape?
Well, Bester, true to form, continued to deny any involvement in the escape. However, some of his co-conspirators, including Dr. Magudumana's father and the CCTV technician, claimed they were coerced or manipulated by Bester into participating in the scheme.
So he was still trying to pull the strings, even from behind bars.
It seems that way. The documentary suggests that he was a master manipulator, even in this situation.
So with all these charges and the evidence against him, what was the outcome?
As of the making of the documentary, the trial is still ongoing, set to begin in February 2025.
So there are still a lot of unanswered questions.
Absolutely. The trial will likely bring new revelations and further expose the complexities of this case. We'll have to wait and see what the final verdict will be, and whether justice will be served for all those affected by Bester's actions.
Okay, so we have this incredible story of escape, intrigue, and corruption. But what are the larger implications here? What does this case tell us about the state of the South African justice system?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the trial is set for February 2025. There are still many unanswered questions, but one thing is clear. This case has shaken the South African justice system to its core and brought to the forefront the urgent need for reform.
And it's important to remember that the documentary we're discussing offers just one perspective on this complex story. As the trial unfolds, we're likely to hear different accounts, new evidence, and perhaps even more shocking revelations. It's a story that continues to evolve.
It's like a real-life thriller that's still being written. But beyond the legal proceedings, this case raises important questions about our society as a whole. What does it say about our fascination with wealth and status? That someone like Bester could manipulate so many people simply by pretending to be a successful businessman? Yeah, it's a fascinating sociological question. Bester tapped into a very deep-seated human desire for connection, belonging, and validation. By creating this persona of Tom Motsepe, he offered people a glimpse into a world they aspired to be part of. And they were so eager to believe in this illusion that they overlooked the red flags, the inconsistencies, and the nagging doubts.
It's a reminder that we all have vulnerabilities, and con artists like Bester are masters at exploiting those vulnerabilities. He preyed on people's hopes, their dreams, and their desire for a better life. And sadly, those who are most vulnerable are often the easiest targets.
That's a really important point. You know, we often think of con artists as preying on the wealthy or the naive, but the reality is that anyone can be a victim. Bester's victims came from all walks of life, from the affluent socialites who attended his lavish parties, to the everyday people he scammed through his various schemes.
It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant, to think critically, and to question things that seem too good to be true. If something sounds too amazing, it probably is. And it's crucial to do our research, verify information, and trust our instincts.
Absolutely. And this applies not only to potential financial scams, but to all areas of our lives. You know, we're bombarded with information from so many sources these days, and it's more important than ever to be discerning consumers of information.
We need to develop our media literacy skills, learn how to spot misinformation, and be wary of those who try to manipulate us with emotional appeals or biased narratives.
And let's not forget about the role of social media in all of this. Bester was a master of social media manipulation. He used it to cultivate his image, build his following, and ultimately deceive people on a grand scale.
Yeah, social media can be a powerful tool for connection and communication. but it can also be a breeding ground for deception and manipulation. It's crucial to be aware of the potential pitfalls and to approach social media with a healthy dose of skepticism.
And this case also raises some broader ethical questions about the role of technology in our lives. Bester's use of a laptop in prison, ostensibly for educational purposes, highlights the potential for technology to be misused, even in highly controlled environments.
It's a reminder that technology is a double-edged sword. It can be used for good or for evil, and it's up to us to ensure that it's used responsibly and ethically.
And this leads to a crucial discussion about prison reform. Bester's escape exposed serious security flaws and a culture of corruption within the South African prison system. This case should be a wake-up call for authorities to implement stricter security measures, address corruption head-on, and ensure that prisons are places of rehabilitation, not breeding grounds for further criminal activity.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But it's clear that something needs to change, and it's not just about South Africa. Prison systems around the world face similar challenges. We need to invest in programs that address the root causes of crime, provide opportunities for rehabilitation, and ensure that prisons are humane and safe environments for both inmates and staff.
And as we delve deeper into the social implications of this case, it's important to consider the impact on the victims. Katlego Bering's tragic death underscores the devastating consequences of Bester's actions. His family is left to grapple with the loss of their loved one, while knowing that his death was merely a pawn in Bester's elaborate escape plan.
It's a reminder that behind the headlines and the sensationalism, there are real people whose lives have been irrevocably altered by these events. We must never lose sight of the human cost of crime and the ripple effects it creates throughout communities and families.
And beyond the immediate victims, this case has had a profound impact on South African society as a whole. It has shaken people's trust in the justice system, fueled cynicism about the government's ability to address corruption, and sparked a national conversation about inequality, privilege, and the abuse of power.
It's a story that has captivated a nation and forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about their society. And while the trial is still ongoing, the Thabo Bester saga will undoubtedly have a lasting impact on South Africa's social and political landscape. It has exposed deep-seated problems that can no longer be ignored.
And it's important to remember that this is not just a South African story. It's a story that resonates globally. It speaks to very universal themes of human ambition deception, the allure of wealth and status, and the fragility of trust.
It's a story that reminds us that even in the age of information and technology, we're still vulnerable to manipulation, and that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing battle that requires constant vigilance.
So as we await the outcome of the trial and the next chapter in this unfolding saga, let's continue to engage in thoughtful discussions about the issues this case has brought to light. Let's challenge assumptions, hold those in power accountable, and strive to create a more just and equitable world for all.
And that, my friends, concludes our deep dive into the captivating and unsettling story of Thabo Bester. We've explored his crimes, his escape, the web of accomplices, and the broader social and ethical implications of this case. It's a story that continues to unfold, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on any major developments.
And remember, the documentary we discussed today is just one perspective on this very complex story. As the trial progresses, we're likely to hear new information, different interpretations, and perhaps even more surprising twists and turns. It's a story that will continue to captivate and challenge us in the months and years to come.
So as always, we encourage you to stay informed, think critically, and engage in meaningful conversations about the issues that matter most.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to The Unseen Wisdom for more explorations into the fascinating and often hidden stories that shape our world.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.